Craig Mish and Barry Jackson dropped their phenomenal article sharing the latest on the Marlins. They want to keep both De La Cruz and Sanchez on the 26th. It'll be between Yuli and Jose Iglesias to see who gets a roster spot. And I think where we're going to aim to. Both Yuli and Jose Iglesias were basically signed on the same day, just a couple hours after. One Yuli was signed, Iglesias was signed, or even a couple minutes after. They've both struggled, but we've seen some really nice plays at first from Yuli Gurriel, and we've seen some, good stuff from Iglesias, I guess we could say. And this, I guess, is kind of the debate we'll start with, and before we go into our 5 bold predictions. Isaac, Yuli, or Jose Iglesias? Who do you think should be on that opening day roster? As much as I would like both, there has to be one that we choose here.
So we're recording this on March 23rd, 2 days away from when they can decide to opt out, if I have that correct. So according to the report, Miami will have to go with just one or the other. In my opinion, you got to go with, you don't have many first basemen in this whole organization. I think you got to stick with the Gold Glove winner, the batting champ from a couple of years ago, Yuli Gurriel on this team, solely because I do like Iglesias, and I think he would be the perfect platoon option with Joey Wendell. But I do believe that they have enough left side of the infield depth that they could sort of patch their way through the season with, Xavier Edwards and Jacob Amaya and Jordan Groshans if need be. And I know Joey Wendell's had a horrible spring. I think he's 4 for 34, something along those lines. So it would be tough. I do like Iglesias' hit tool. I like his fielding a lot better than Wendell's. But I do think that Gurriel would be the perfect late inning defensive replacement at first base. And also you're not losing much offensively when it comes to, replacing Cooper with him. Obviously you are losing a little bit, but not an insane amount where it'd be a horrific first base, defensive replacement, sort of like what Miguel Rojas would do back in the day for Justin Bour. I would lean towards keeping Gurriel on the roster because you could always use the extra power as well.
Well, the easy cop-out here is say, why not keep both of them? Because that is more of a better possibility than you might think. To be clear about their contracts, they have the ability to opt out on Saturday, but they also have extra opt-outs later in the year. If they choose to wait and see, there's another one on May 1st and one after that on June 1st for both of these guys. I think the best scenario would be picking one of the two to get onto the active roster and then persuading the other one to stick around extended spring training with maybe a brief AAA rehab assignment in the middle and just have them stand by for those first few weeks of the season until if and pretty likely when somebody gets hurt or somebody really struggles out of the gate, then you would need them. That'd be the dream, is keeping both of them around and getting the second one up there when you eventually need them. Realistically, if you have to choose, I went towards Iglesias, considering for his position, he might not actually be the better defender. He might be like a league average shortstop, whereas Gurriel, from what we've seen and from what he's done, he's probably an above average first baseman. It's just that average defense at shortstop is more valuable than first base. Also because Iglesias can contribute at second or even at third if you need him to. That versatility is really important. He's several years younger than Gurriel. So I think that it makes me as closely removed as Gurriel is to being an awesome player. Just 2 seasons ago, being great for the Astros on an everyday basis with an OPS in the 800s. It's when you reach a certain stage of your career, it becomes way less likely that you'll bounce back and revert to who you used to be. And from what I've seen in a really small sample of him offensively this spring, he looks washed up, at least offensively. I don't see where forget home run power. I don't see where the extra base power is in there anymore. You can only trust him so much at first base, I believe, at this point of his career. It's a different story if you think he could fake it at those other infield positions, but they haven't even experimented with that in spring games to this point, which I think shows you how they really feel about him at this stage. And even as a base runner, I think Iglesias has a little bit more upside. If you look at his measurables, he's still above average as a sprinter, even though he hasn't been stealing bases. That's the one thing that I just talked to him about when I was actually there the day that they were introduced, is how with the rule changes, that several of them that encourage more base stealing, more efficient base stealing, he seems kind of optimistic that he would be able to impact the game more as a base runner than he has the last few years. So all that being said, I just lean towards the guy that is more versatile and valuable defensively, and one that both of them good bat to ball qualities. Ultimately, this makes a lot of sense to me if they were willing to play Luis Arraez as the backup first baseman. The reason why it's compelling to keep Gurriel around is because their first base depth is pretty poor. If you exclude Arraez, I don't know why they're excluding Arraez as a first base option. He played it primarily there. Last year, he just played it in the WBC for Venezuela. I think that's the best possible team they could put together, is having Iglesias on there, having Arraez play first base pretty frequently when Cooper doesn't, and Gurriel being out of the picture. If he sticks around in AAA, great. So that's the best version of the team, and it really is difficult to solve this if they're not willing to play Arraez at first base. And that's, I think, where we are. That's the reason why this is a tough decision, because they're stubborn or because they're catering to what Arraez wants as an everyday second baseman. That's what makes this really complicated. So I have a lot of trouble predicting what they're going to do, but to me, what they should do is pretty clear.
And, you know, the other thing with the platoon that Isaac mentions with Wendell and Iglesias hits lefties a lot better than Wendell does. Wendell was really bad against lefties last year, but Wendell was better against the righties. And that's kind of where you see the platoon offensively. Defensively, you could probably make the case that Iglesias is league average, as Eli mentioned. Wendell, still yet to be seen. I mean, I don't think he's made an error thus far in spring training. So we'll see what happens. But personally, I think I would go with Iglesias. Just think the better hitter overall at this stage in his career. He's been doing this at a very consistent rate, and every major league ballpark so far that he's played in. So, and then Iglesias, I mean, Yuli, you just kind of hope he bounces back. And I mean, these guys did sign very, very late into the spring and through spring training. So kind of makes sense to see one of them go through the extended spring training, maybe even a couple starts at AAA, like Eli mentioned. And you hope they stay, because, you know, these guys didn't, you would think they signed knowing that at some point they would be on the major league roster, not because I know Yuli had interest from the Twins, and the Astros would have liked to bring him back, and you would assume that he signed Miami knowing at one point he would be on the major league roster. So